Lotte is a project assistant since 2009 in the OAPEN Foundation, and her main focus is engaging with publishers worldwide. If I said that right. And Laura, she joined OAPEN as a project manager this year. And her main areas of work are the books analytics dashboards, PRISM, as the service she's presenting today, and the technical support for OAPEN, DOAB, and the OA Books Toolkit. So we are really happy to have you here today, and I will give you now the stage to present PRISM. We are really happy. Thank you already.
Thank you, Marlene, for the introduction. And we're also very happy to be included here and to have the opportunity to talk more about our brand new service. I will start sharing my screen now for my PowerPoint. Just a moment. And do you see my first slide now? Okay. So thank you all for joining us. It's very good to see so many of you attending here. And also many thanks to OPERAS Germany and Patrick and Marlene that we can talk here during this OPERAS Open Chat. As Marlene introduced us, my name is Lotte Kruijt. I'm Publisher Relations Manager at the Directory of Open Access Books and OAPEN Foundation. And I'll give you a short introduction to DOAB, after which my colleague Laura Wilkinson will get into detail about our brand new service, PRISM, the peer review information service for monographs. So DOAB, here you can see our homepage with a search box, and you can see a few publications organized on subject. And the tagline or tagline included here explains best what we do in a nutshell. So let's hear it. DOAB is a community-driven discovery service that indexes and provides access to scholarly, peer-reviewed open access books and helps users to find trusted open access book publishers. All DOAB services are free of charge and all data is freely available. But to better understand DOAB as a service, it's good to see it in its wider context. So DOAB is a service run by the OAPEN Foundation. The OAPEN Foundation is a not-for-profit organization based in the Netherlands, but operating worldwide and providing infrastructure services enabling open access to scholarly books. As you can see here, the OAPEN Foundation operates 3 platforms. The first is the OAPEN Library. You just saw a screenshot of the homepage. In the OAPEN Library, the publisher's content, so the open access books and book chapters and its metadata, is hosted on its server, on the OAPEN server. Whereas the Directory of Open Access Books refers to the books on other platforms. It indexes the books. And the content is hosted on other platforms, such as the publisher's websites. Oh, sorry. The third platform is the OAPEN OA Books Toolkit. And this is a really great resource for authors or potential authors of open access books. And it lists many short articles on topics relevant for the author. It also includes author success stories where they share their experience around publishing in open access. We've heard from publishers that they're recommending this resource to their authors when their authors are asking about open access. So I do recommend you to check this out if you haven't already. These 3 platforms run by the OAPEN Foundation have a shared mission, which is twofold: to increase the discoverability of open access books and to promote and build trust in open access book publishing. The second part of the mission is especially prominent in the PRISM service, as you will hear later from Laura. Having said this, from the context of the OAPEN Foundation and these 3 platforms, we will now zoom back in on DOAB, Directory of Open Access Books. DOAB was launched as a spin-off from OAPEN, and it was inspired on the model of DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. And this was back in 2013, so that means early next year we're having our 10-year anniversary. Currently, DOAB indexes over 60,000 open access books from over 600 publishers worldwide. And here you can see this quite impressive growth in this diagram, and new titles are being added every day. This webinar is mainly aimed at publishers, but as I noticed in the poll, there are also many librarians among you. So if this information is a bit redundant, I'm sorry, but talking to publishers, it's good to know that DOAB is open and free of charge to all academic publishers that meet our requirements. If you're a publisher and your organization isn't included in DOAB yet, there's an application procedure and a corresponding application form to be filled out. Our main requirements are that the academic books in DOAB are available under an open access license, such as a Creative Commons license, and the academic books in DOAB have been subjected to independent and external peer review before publication. And in the publication form, there are more details to be provided by the publisher, and we're following membership guidelines from OASPA in this review process as closely as possible. Having your books included as a publisher in DOAB means increased discoverability and also easy integration with library catalogs through all these different means listed here on the right of the bottom of this slide. So after knowing a bit more about how DOAB works, hopefully, I wanted to show you this image to illustrate how DOAB functions in relation to the OAPEN library and other platforms in a more visualized way. So as you can see here in DOAB, the files of the book are indexed, the metadata is included, but to retrieve the actual book, in most cases, this will be the PDF file, DOAB refers to other platforms where the book is hosted. And you can see here that one of these platforms is the OAPEN library, but there are also other platforms where the content can be retrieved, and in many cases, the book can be downloaded directly from the publisher's websites. Now, to top this off, another visualization. This diagram here explains our workflows. Please don't be alarmed by the complexity of this, as I was when I first saw this. It's actually quite simple. You can also find this diagram on our website and have a closer look if you're interested. So at the left, there are all these different publishers we work with, either directly or through intermediaries. They provide the metadata, including download links of the books to DOAB. And the publications are also coming from OAPEN, as you can see, in all these different metadata formats in these boxes in the middle of the diagram, either directly or through intermediaries. And this content is made available to the end user, which is also can be directly or through an intermediary. We can imagine that this diagram might be a bit overwhelming, but the good news is that we ensure a smooth process for you when you're using our services as a publisher. So before my colleague Laura will take over here to explain about PRISM, because that was what you were all waiting for, let's very quickly wrap this up by summarizing what we've talked about. DOAB is a discovery service indexing over 60,000 peer-reviewed open access books from over 600 publishers. It's a platform run by OAPEN Foundation with a shared mission to increase the discoverability of open access books and to promote and build trust in open access book publishing. If you're a publisher and not included yet, we welcome you to join us, and you can check out our website for information about the application and requirements, and of course contact me if you have any questions. My email address is included here. And now do stay with us here to learn more about PRISM. I can imagine you're all eager to hear about it. So thank you all so much for listening, and over to Laura.
Many thanks, Lotte. And thank you to everybody for joining us here today. So it's my pleasure to speak to you today. My name's Laura Wilkinson. I'm project manager at OAPEN and DOAB. Thank you to Marlène for the introduction earlier. And today I'm speaking to you from Aix-les-Bains in the French Alps. And I hope you've all got a beautiful sunny day as we have here in the mountains. I hope you can see my slide there. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to speak to you today about PRISM, the peer review information service for monographs. I'd like to start with the bigger picture view about the benefits of PRISM. PRISM at heart is a standardized way for academic publishers to display information about their peer review processes across their entire catalogue. So at the publisher level, this means that all their peer review processes are visible because they might have more than one process. It's possible for them to add all of these to PRISM. And at the level of an individual publication, the peer review process that applies to that particular work is exposed. The goal of PRISM, therefore, is to allow more transparency about the peer review processes that apply to particular works. Normally, we're used to seeing on a publisher's website, for example, some information about peer review, but it tends to be quite general and quite high level. But when we go to one of their books, we often don't know exactly what went into the peer review process for that particular work. So the idea with PRISM is to bring those two closer together and provide more information that's more specific to a particular work. PRISM is a service that's provided by DOAB, and we're also part of the OPERAS service catalogue under the category of quality assurance services. How can PRISM help different audiences then? For publishers, it allows them to expose the peer review processes that apply to the works in their collection. Publishers do a lot of work to make peer review happen, and this is a way for them to make that work visible to people who want to know more about it. For the librarians, we are many today on the call. This allows us to see the quality control processes that apply to a particular work. So when you want to recommend a work to your researchers or to your students, you can do that confidently because you have the PRISM information to let you know that you can recommend this work as a reliable source for your readers. For funders, PRISM gives detailed information about the quality assurance of the research outputs that have been funded by that particular funder. And finally, for researchers, students, or general readers, PRISM allows these readers to see which quality control process has applied to the work, giving them more information about that particular publisher. So we hope that with PRISM service, it allows this information to be exposed to all the stakeholders who are involved with benefits for each party. So that's the theory of PRISM, but how can we see PRISM in action? Well, there are 4 different ways to see this. The first one is when you come to the DOAB site, we have a list, an A to Z list of all of the different publishers who participate in PRISM, participate in DOAB. And if they participate in PRISM, you will be able to see the PRISM logo next to the name of the publisher. And if you click on the logo, you'll be able to see the information about their peer review process or processes if they have more than one. So that's across the level of the whole publisher. The second way is at the level of an individual work. Again, on the DOAB site, if you go to a specific work and you see the PRISM logo next to the title, you can click on that to see the general overview of the peer review process that applied to that work. And if the publisher has chosen to give more information, perhaps they have made the reviewer comments open, you might also see that associated with that record. The third way is if you wish to see all the works in DOAB that have PRISM information, you can use this query and it will return all of the records that have PRISM information associated with them. You can see in my screen capture that we currently have 225 records with PRISM information associated. That comes from the test phase of PRISM. And now this week that we've just, in the last few days, done the official launch, we're hoping that this number is going to climb every day. So you can join us in celebrating that this is becoming more and more open every day with more information being added. And the fourth way is that PRISM peer review metadata, as well as being visible to humans on the website, It also forms part of the metadata for the works in DOAB, which means it's retrievable and reusable by machines. And the DOAB API is distributed freely and incorporated into library search tools all over the world. So it makes this information accessible to a very wide audience all around the world. As Lotte said, we're used to talking about PRISM to publisher audiences, and in today's group, we have just a few of you who are publishers. Hello, thank you for coming. But even for the people who are not publishers, you might be interested to know what goes into the recipe for PRISM. A bit like when you make food at home, you like to know what's gone into your meal. So from the publisher point of view, what do you need to do to participate in PRISM? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to prepare, because as part of providing PRISM information to DOAB, you're going to need to know what goes on at your organization, at your different editorial boards, because if you're going to answer questions on our form about how peer review happens at your organization, obviously you need to be in touch with your colleagues so that everybody's agreed about what information you're going to share and describe as part of that process. It's really important to spend time doing this first, because then when you come to the next steps, it's going to make it much quicker if you already have that information collected. Secondly, you need to be a member of DOAB. Hello to all the people who are members already, and welcome soon to those who might be joining as a result of this. Step 3, you're a member of DOAB, you log in as you would add or edit a record, but this time you're going to create a special sort of submission which is for PRISM, and you will see this in the drop-down menu when you log in. You don't have to go looking for it. It makes it easy. And you will have to, at this point, give the information that you've collected from your colleagues in step 1 by answering a series of questions about your peer review processes. And you then submit this PRISM peer review submission, which is checked on our side by the DOAB administrator, which in practice is often Lotte. Thank you, Lotte, for doing that. When that submission is accepted, we talk about it as a PRISM record rather than a PRISM submission. And the publisher gets a notification to say this process is complete. And once they have one or more PRISM records in the system, it's then possible to attach that PRISM record to works in DOAB so that the two sides are connected together. And once you've done this, it means that your peer review process information is now available to be used and interpreted by all of your different stakeholder groups, as I described in the previous slide. So in terms of the information that each publisher provides as part of their submission, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the information that they're providing. When logged into DOAB to provide the submission, they will see a series of questions that have radio buttons to choose an answer. That's for the overall PRISM record for their process as a general principle. If the publisher wants later on to associate a peer review record with a particular work and maybe link out to open peer review comments or something much more specific, they do that at the level of the individual work that they're associating the PRISM record with, not yet at this top level of overview of their peer review process. So firstly, they provide a title. It's important to choose a title that's descriptive and different from the other processes that might be in place at their publishing house. You can imagine that you might have quite a few different processes, and it's important to be able to tell them apart. The second point is about what is being reviewed. Is it a book proposal? Is it the full text of a work, or perhaps just a section? What about the anonymity of authors and reviewers? Is it double anonymized, often called double blind? You might recognize that form of words. Double anonymized is when neither the author nor the reviewer know the identity of the other party. Single anonymized is typically where the reviewer knows who the author is, but not the other way around. Or alternatively, it could be that all identities are known within that group. Fourthly, who is it who conducts the review? It might be, for example, an external peer reviewer or perhaps an editorial board member. What about the review stage? is the peer review being conducted before publication or after? In the case of open review, are the review comments published? It's just a simple yes or no. And the final bit is about the publishing responsibility. Who is it that makes the final decision to publish? It might be the series editor, for example, or perhaps a scientific board. So now that you know all about PRISM, I hope you're ready to participate. You can find all the information you need at these two links, which I'm just about to put into the chat. So don't worry about trying to write them out. I'll put them in the chat in just a moment. And at this point in the webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to invite your questions. So even if you think you haven't got a question, you might find it interesting to stay for the chat just because of what you might learn from other people. And it's also really useful for us to have the discussion section of the webinar because it helps us to learn where we can communicate more clearly. It might give us some more ideas for how in future we might develop the service and so on. So we really do look forward to discussing with you. I'll stop my screen share and then we can open the discussion. Thank you, everybody.